Jaden Moore knelt in his driveway, soldering a loose wire on the underside of his custom-built drone. The afternoon sun warmed his skin as the whirring sounds of suburban life buzzed faintly in the background. Dogs barking, kids playing, sprinklers ticking. His laptop sat beside him on a portable table, the screen filled with code and flight diagnostics. To Jaden, this was peace. A break from school stress, a moment of focus. He wasn't causing trouble. He was just fixing a glitch. Across the street, Pamela Winston stood behind her living room curtains, watching him closely. Her lips tightened as her eyes narrowed. She had lived on Maple Ridge Lane for over 2 decades and prided herself on knowing everything that went on in the neighborhood. She had seen Jaden many times before. Quiet, polite, always had headphones on, barely talked to anyone. Still, something about the way he crouched there with wires, antennas, and that strange-looking controller gave her a sinking feeling. She reached for her phone. "There's a young man outside my house with some sort of flying device," she told the dispatcher, lowering her voice as if secrecy made her credible. "He's been pointing it at homes. I think he might be spying on people. Can you send someone to check?" Jaden, unaware of the call, adjusted his drone's signal receiver. He noticed a slight lag in the live video feed and tried resetting the channel. Something strange had been happening for a few days. His drone feed occasionally picked up blurry, split-screen views that weren't from his camera. He'd assumed it was a bug in the software, but today it was clearer than before. Just as he opened the signal log, he heard a car pull up beside the curb. He looked up and saw a black-and-white cruiser rolling to a stop in front of his house. 2 officers stepped out. One, tall with a stern jawline and mirrored sunglasses, approached with purpose. The other, younger with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, followed close behind. "Afternoon, sir," the tall one said, resting a hand near his belt. "We got a report about suspicious activity. Can you tell us what you're doing?" Jaden straightened slowly, keeping his hands visible. "I'm working on my drone. It's having some signal issues, so I'm trying to debug it." The older officer, whose badge read Holloway, glanced at the table of electronics. "Someone said you were pointing cameras at homes." Jaden blinked. "It has a camera, but it's not even in flight mode. I was working on the software, not recording anything." Before the officers could respond, Pamela appeared on her porch, arms crossed. "He's been sitting there for an hour, aiming that thing all over the place," she snapped. "It's dangerous. You never know these days." Officer Reese, the younger one, looked from Pamela to Jaden, her brow furrowed. "Sir, would you mind showing us what you're working on?" Jaden hesitated but nodded. He turned his laptop screen toward them. "This is the flight diagnostic panel, see? The drone's not even active. It's in manual calibration mode." Reese leaned in, reading the data. "These aren't video files. This is live signal analysis." Jaden nodded. "I noticed interference lately. It's like someone else is piggybacking off the signal." Holloway didn't look convinced, but he stepped back a little. "You're saying someone's hijacking your drone?" "Maybe not the drone," Jaden replied, "but something weird is going on. I picked up strange camera feeds. I'm trying to figure out where they're coming from." Pamela frowned. "That's ridiculous. I saw you pointing that thing toward my house." Jaden didn't even glance at her. "You saw what you wanted to see." Reese tapped her radio. "This might be more than a noise complaint." Jaden opened a folder marked Logs and clicked on a recent file. A split screen appeared, showing grainy footage of multiple rooms. A kitchen, a hallway, a child's bedroom. None of it matched Jaden's house. Reese's tone shifted. "This isn't yours?" "No, I live alone. No kids. No hallway like that." Pamela's face paled slightly. Wait, where are those videos coming from? Jaden's fingers flew across the keyboard. That's what I've been trying to figure out. In that moment, the officers realized something bigger might be unfolding. Pamela stepped back, her confidence visibly shaken. Jaden stayed calm, but inside, his mind raced. He had a feeling this was only the beginning. Jaden's fingers moved quickly over the keyboard, pulling up data packets and timestamps. The laptop's cooling fan hummed louder as lines of code ran across the screen. Officer Reese watched silently, eyes tracking each line. Officer Holloway stood slightly behind them, arms folded, glancing occasionally at Pamela, who lingered near the sidewalk, visibly unsettled. These video feeds, Jaden said, pointing to the split screen, aren't from my equipment. My drone doesn't have night vision or multiple channel input. Someone else is broadcasting this. Reese leaned closer. How did it end up showing on your system? Jaden tapped a window. I think someone's spoofing nearby Wi-Fi networks. My drone connected automatically to what looked like mine, but it wasn't. The names were identical, but the signal source was different. Once connected, my drone started receiving footage I didn't ask for. Holloway frowned. You're saying someone cloned your network? Jaden nodded. Not just mine. That's likely how they're getting into smart devices. Cameras, doorbells, maybe even baby monitors. Pamela's voice cracked. That sounds like a movie plot. Who would do that here? Reese didn't answer. She focused on the map Jaden had loaded, showing signal strength variations and network traffic. I've mapped out where the interference is strongest, Jaden continued, dragging a cursor across the screen. It peaks right around 4 houses on this block. Reese asked, Can you isolate it further? Give me 5 minutes. Pamela looked uneasy. This doesn't make sense. This street is safe. We've lived here for years without any trouble. Jaden didn't look at her. Trouble doesn't always knock on the front door. Sometimes it sneaks in through the Wi-Fi. He opened a signal tracking app, using the drone's sensors to triangulate the source of the mysterious transmission. The drone, though grounded, still processed network strength from its last flights. Jaden synced the data with his software, adjusting for distance and angle. Reese watched, impressed. Holloway finally broke the silence. So, what exactly are we looking for? Whoever's running this is using a relay, Jaden replied. They've created a hidden network that tricks devices into connecting. Once that happens, they have access to everything. Reese's face darkened. A neighborhood-wide surveillance ring? Jaden's eyes didn't leave the screen. That's what it looks like. The map blinked, then a red marker flashed, on a specific location. One house just a few doors down from Pamela's. Reese looked up. Whose place is that? Pamela stared at the address and slowly stepped back, her face drained of color. That's my house. Holloway raised an EVCD eyebrow. Excuse me, Pamela stammered. No, there has to be a mistake. Nobody in my home knows how to do this kind of thing. Jaden turned toward her for the first time since the officers arrived. Do you live alone? No, she said hesitantly. My son, Eli. He moved back in a few months ago. He stays in the basement. He's always on his computer, but he wouldn't. Jaden didn't need to respond. The evidence filled the screen. Reese's voice turned firm. We need to speak with him. Now. Pamela looked completely lost. I don't understand. He keeps to himself. Works on coding stuff, I thought. He barely talks to me. Reese stepped in toward her. Ma'am, can you give us access to your home? Pamela nodded shakily. Yes, of course. As the group crossed the lawn, Pamela's steps grew heavier. Her mind raced. She had been so sure Jaden was the problem, yet now her son was at the center of something far worse. Inside the house, it smelled of old wood and lavender candles. Pamela led them to a narrow stairwell that descended to a dim basement. She paused at the top, visibly trembling. Reese took the lead. "We'll handle it from here." Jaden stood at the doorway, watching. Though he wanted to see justice, he knew his presence might make things worse. Reese and Holloway descended carefully. Faint music played behind the closed door. Holloway knocked hard. "Eli Winston, this is the police. Open the door." There was silence. Then the music stopped. Footsteps shuffled. The doorknob clicked and slowly turned. The door creaked open to reveal a young man, slightly hunched, pale, with headphones still draped around his neck. His eyes widened at the sight of uniforms. "What's going on?" Eli asked, trying to sound casual. Reese didn't blink. "We need to ask you some questions about suspicious network activity." Eli shrugged. "I don't know anything about that." Holloway looked past him, spotting multiple monitors, wires, and a server tower glowing blue in the corner. "Mind if we come in?" Holloway asked. "I'd prefer you didn't," Eli muttered. Reese stepped forward. "We're not asking." Eli stepped aside slowly, and the officers entered. Within moments, they saw enough to confirm everything Jaden had uncovered. Back upstairs, Pamela sat silently on the couch, her hands clenched together. Her world was shifting faster than she could process. Jaden remained by the door, still watching, still waiting. And what the officers would find next would change everything. The basement was dimly lit, the only glow coming from Eli's computer setup. Multiple monitors covered one side of the room, screensaver animations bouncing across them like restless spirits. The hum of electronics filled the space, interrupted only by the soft clicking of Officer Reese's boots on the floor. Eli stood awkwardly beside his desk, arms folded tightly, trying to look unfazed. His breathing betrayed him, shallow and uneven. Officer Holloway scanned the room, his eyes moving from wires to routers to the blinking server tower nestled in the corner like a mechanical beast. "You've got quite the setup here," Holloway said, his voice edged with suspicion. "All this for schoolwork?" Eli gave a stiff nod. "Yeah, cybersecurity class. I'm just experimenting with network architecture." Reese stepped closer to the monitors. "Mind unlocking the desktop?" He hesitated, licking his lips. "I'd rather not. There's personal stuff." "We're not interested in your playlist," Holloway snapped. "Either open it or we bring in a warrant and a team that won't ask so nicely." Eli's fingers twitched. After a long pause, he sat down and tapped a few keys. The screen unlocked. Rows of data filled the desktop, folders with labels like access logs, cam feeds, and archive. Reese clicked on one marked Live View. A mosaic of video thumbnails opened instantly, showing different angles from various houses, bedrooms, living rooms, nurseries. Holloway's jaw clenched. "That's not classroom work. That's surveillance." Eli raised his hands defensively. "It's not what you think." "No?" Reese turned slowly to face him. "Because it looks like you've been watching your neighbors in their most private moments and recording them." "I didn't mean for it to go that far," he said, quickly, eyes darting to the floor. "At first, I was just testing vulnerabilities, seeing if people changed default passwords, checking who left their networks open. It was just curiosity." "You exploited that curiosity into a crime," Holloway growled. "You impersonated Wi-Fi networks, intercepted smart devices, and tapped into security systems. You crossed a line." Reese scrolled through another folder labeled Neighbors. Inside were names, house numbers, and saved clips with timestamps. The air grew colder with each revelation. Upstairs, Pamela sat still on the couch, her face pale, her expression distant. She had barely moved since the officers descended into the basement. Her thoughts swirled with disbelief and guilt. Every second that passed seemed to deepen the pit in her stomach. Jaden remained at the front door, unwilling to step inside but close enough to hear muffled voices. He glanced at Pamela once, but she didn't look his way. Whatever pride she once held had cracked under the weight of reality. The sound of footsteps climbing the stairs broke the silence. Reese emerged first, followed by Holloway, who had Eli in tow, hands cuffed behind his back. Eli's head hung low. He didn't resist. The glow of confidence he once carried had vanished completely. Pamela's voice barely escaped her throat. "Eli, please tell me they're wrong." He looked up at her, eyes glassy. "I thought I could stop any time. I didn't think it would hurt anyone." "You've been spying on families," Holloway snapped. "You didn't just cross a line, you burned it." Reese guided him toward the door, pausing near Jaden. She looked him in the eyes. "You were right. Without your help, we may never have found this." Jaden nodded slightly. He didn't need praise. The truth was enough. Pamela stood up, unsteady, watching her son being led away. Her voice cracked. "I called the police. On you." Jaden didn't answer right away. His gaze lingered on her for a moment. When he finally spoke, his tone was calm but firm. "You judged me because of how I looked. Meanwhile, your own family was violating everyone's privacy." "I didn't know," she whispered, trembling. "That's the point," Jaden replied. "You didn't even try to find out." Reese and Holloway loaded Eli into the patrol car as neighbors began, stepping out of their homes, curious about the commotion. Whispers spread quickly across the street. Jaden stood quietly, letting the weight of the moment settle. He felt vindicated, but not satisfied. Pamela remained frozen on the porch, arms folded across her chest. The afternoon light cast long shadows, as if the entire neighborhood were holding its breath. Reese returned from the car, glancing at the stunned crowd. "We'll need to collect Eli's equipment for evidence," she told Pamela. "Someone from cybercrime will follow up. For now, you should lock the basement and stay upstairs." Pamela nodded numbly. Her eyes avoided Jaden's. Holloway offered Jaden a respectful nod. "Keep doing what you're doing, son. You saved a lot of people today." Jaden said nothing. He simply turned and walked back to his porch, drone still sitting quietly on the table. The camera lens, once suspected of spying, had only ever looked up, never in. Behind him, the patrol car pulled away, carrying Eli toward the station. The street, once filled with suspicion, had seen the truth unfold. But the sting of assumptions and betrayal would linger long after the echoes of the sirens faded. Jaden sat on the steps, watching the sky turn amber. Trust was hard to earn, easier to break. But in that moment, he chose silence over anger. Sometimes, the lesson spoke louder than words. Jaden sat on his porch again, drone packed away, laptop closed. He wasn't working today. He was thinking, processing, the kind of silence that followed storms. Although justice had been served, the bitter taste of how it all began still lingered. Being innocent hadn't stopped someone from calling the police on him. Across the street, Pamela watched him from inside her kitchen. Her coffee sat untouched. Her home felt unfamiliar now, hollow and heavy. She had spent years believing she was a good neighbor, someone who looked out for others. Yesterday, that illusion crumbled. She had accused the wrong person, while the Real threat had lived beneath her feet. Eli's room was locked. The basement sealed until investigators could complete their work. She had hardly slept, her mind replaying every moment, every assumption, every word. And now, the boy she had raised faced criminal charges, because she never asked what he was truly doing behind that closed door. Later that afternoon, a knock at Jaden's door broke the stillness. He opened it to find Officer Reese standing outside, dressed in plain clothes, but still carrying the same calm presence. "Just checking in," she said gently. Jaden stepped aside, letting her in. She looked around the living room. Modest, neat, full of small personal touches. Framed photos of family, books on shelves, tools for drone work lined neatly along a table. "I wanted to thank you again," she said. "You were the only reason. We caught this early." Jaden sat down across from her. "I just followed what didn't feel right." Reese nodded. "And you stayed composed through all of it. That's not easy." "I know I can't change what happened," she finally said, "but I wanted you to know. You handled it better than most adults would have." Jaden offered a faint smile. "I've had practice." As she left, she gave him a card with her direct number. "If you ever want to work with the tech department in the future, give me a call. You've got the mind for it." He nodded, watching her walk down the steps. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. An hour later, a hesitant knock came again. Jaden opened the door slowly. Pamela stood there, wearing a sweater, though the sun still shone high. Her hands were clasped, eyes tired. "Hi," she said quietly. Jaden didn't move. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see right now," she continued, "but I came here because I owe you more than just an apology." He said nothing, but didn't close the door. Pamela shifted uneasily. "You were doing nothing wrong. You were in your own yard, working on something you built with your own hands, and I assumed the worst. Not because of anything you did, but because of my own fears." Jaden looked down at the porch floor. "You didn't ask. You just reacted." "I know," she said, voice cracking. "And now my son's facing charges. I can't undo that. But I want you to know I've learned more in the last 24 hours than I have in 20 years on this street." Jaden let her words hang in the air. Then he finally spoke. "It's not just about me. You didn't just hurt me. You gave the people watching from their windows permission to think the same way." Pamela nodded, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. "You're right, and I'll carry that." Jaden leaned against the doorframe. "Next time, instead of assuming, just talk to people." She nodded again, unable to say more. She turned and walked back across the street, shoulders lower than they had ever been. Later that week, the neighborhood held a meeting in the community center. Not a potluck, not a block party. A real conversation. About safety. About technology. About prejudice. Jaden was invited to speak. He didn't lecture. He told his story, calmly, clearly. He answered questions. He educated people who never thought they had anything to learn. Afterward, several parents asked him to teach their kids about drones and cybersecurity. One even offered him a summer job. Slowly, the narrative shifted, not because the truth had been told, but because someone had finally listened. Back on his porch, Jaden looked up at the sky again. The same sky that saw everything. This time, it didn't feel so heavy. Because he hadn't just cleared his name, he had changed the neighborhood's eyes, and sometimes that's the start of real change.